The sky cracked open with a thunder that wasn't from Earth. A ship, jagged and dark, tore through the clouds above the ruined city. People ran in every direction as the first spears of light crashed into the buildings. It wasn't an invasion. It was a hunt. Ryland ducked behind a broken wall, dust covering his face and jacket. He looked up at the alien warriors, landing one by one from their floating platform. Tall, armored, glowing from their chests, they moved with the grace of ancient predators. They didn't speak. They only pointed and charged. He had never seen anything like it. Earth's weapons had failed 2 days ago. The military was gone. Cities were burning. Only small groups of survivors moved through the ruins now, trying to stay unnoticed. Ryland wasn't a soldier. He had only come to rescue his younger brother, but he was already too late. A high-pitched screech echoed through the air. Ryland turned. One of the warriors had spotted him. She was taller than the others, her armor black with red lines glowing across it. In her hand was a long silver spear that shimmered with blue energy. Without thinking, he ran. His boots hit broken glass and scorched metal as he leaped over a fallen beam. The alien chased him. She didn't run fast. She didn't need to. Her arm pulled back slowly, ready to throw the spear. Ryland didn't have time to duck. He turned to face her, heart thumping in his chest. The spear left her hand with a whistle. It flew straight at him like lightning. His instincts kicked in. Both his hands shot up. His fingers wrapped around the shaft of the spear as it slammed into his palms. The world froze. The other alien stopped. The warrior's eyes widened behind her mask. The glowing spear didn't explode. It pulsed softly, like it recognized his touch. Ryland stood there, stunned, holding the weapon that should have ended him. The air around him shifted. The female warrior stepped back, her eyes locked on the spear in his grip. She knelt slowly, placing one hand over her chest. The other aliens followed. Ryland didn't understand what was happening, but he didn't move. Suddenly, an old voice echoed from one of their helmets. It spoke English. It sounded like it came from a machine buried in stone. The spear was caught. The bond is sealed. By the law of Valari, she is now, forever. Ryland blinked. What? He whispered. The warrior rose, her face still hidden. She walked toward him slowly and placed her hand over his. She pressed the spear back into his grasp, as if making sure he wouldn't drop it. Her movements were slow, not hostile, almost respectful. Others stepped back as if they didn't dare approach now. One of them let out a cry that sounded like frustration or rage. But no one attacked. The warrior who had thrown the spear stayed by Ryland's side, silent. Still, Ryland tried to speak again, but his voice felt trapped in his throat. The alien warrior looked at him for a long moment. Then she did something unexpected. She reached up and removed her helmet. Silver hair spilled out. Her face was marked with faint glowing lines, and her eyes, bright gold, watched him with curiosity, not anger. She spoke in a voice like wind moving over frozen glass. By my hand, you caught the weapon. By my law, I stand with you. You are my claim now, and I am yours. The city still burned around them, but in this circle of warriors and smoke, a new story had begun, one written by old laws and strange hands. Ryland didn't know what any of it meant, but the look in her eyes told him everything was about to change. The warrior's name was Vetra, and her people called her Shield of the Fifth Flame. She had never bowed to anyone, not even her own warlords. Her spear had ended many battles, but now she walked behind a human, head slightly bowed, hands empty. Ryland walked through the ruins with her at his side. He didn't speak. He didn't know what to say. His fingers still held the glowing spear. It was warm, pulsing like a heartbeat. He had no plan, no idea what to do next. But the aliens kept their distance. They followed quietly, their helmets turned toward the pair. They whispered in their own language. Their words were sharp, like blades scraping stone. Ryland could feel the tension in the air. He didn't know what the bond meant, but it changed something important. Vetra finally stopped and raised her hand. The other warriors halted instantly. Then she turned to Ryland and pointed toward a small building that had survived the fire. The roof was cracked, but it was still standing. Ryland nodded and stepped inside. The room was filled with dust and silence. A broken table leaned to one side. Scattered papers and scorched books covered the floor. Ryland sat down slowly. Vetra entered and stood near the door. Her eyes never left him. She was watching, waiting, guarding. What does this mean? Ryland asked at last. His voice was soft but steady. Why did they stop when I caught your spear? She tilted her head. Then she knelt and drew a strange symbol on the floor using ash from the wall. It looked like a circle with 7 points. In warrior, she said carefully, choosing each word like a soldier choosing weapons. If a mortal catches the bonded weapon, the warrior belongs to him. No battle must be fought between them again. The one who catches becomes the holder of the flame. I don't want to own anyone, Ryland replied. I just wanted to survive. I didn't know any of this. She didn't seem angry. Instead, she touched her chest where the armor glowed and bowed her head slightly. It wasn't submission. It was something older, something sacred. The flame chose you, she said. You cannot return it now. I am yours. You carry my name. I follow your will. That is the law of my people. Ryland looked at the spear again. Its light pulsed stronger for a moment. He felt no power in it. Just wait. Outside, one of the aliens called out sharply. Vetra rose at once and looked through a crack in the wall. She narrowed her eyes and pulled a short blade from her hip. Others come. Not of my clan. They will not follow the law. They will challenge. Ryland stood quickly. Why? I didn't attack anyone. She looked back at him. You now hold one of the 5 sacred weapons. That makes you a threat to the high clans. They will want to test your claim, or end it. Before Ryland could speak again, the wall exploded inward. Dust and fire blasted into the room. 3 new warriors stepped through, their armor marked with gold instead of red. They saw Vetra and snarled. One pointed at Ryland with a staff that sparked with blue energy. Vetra moved without hesitation. Her body became a blur of speed and fire. She blocked the first strike with her blade, then spun and knocked the attacker backward. Ryland gripped the spear tightly, heart pounding in his chest. Another warrior lunged toward him. Ryland didn't think. He raised a spear and blocked the strike. Sparks flew as energy clashed. For a moment, his hand shook from the force. But then, something inside the spear reacted. A pulse of power surged through it and knocked the attacker back. Vetra stood beside him, blood on her armor, fire in her eyes. She looked at the fallen enemies and then turned to Ryland. You fight with fire. The bond grows. They will not stop now. You must decide quickly. Run, or rise as the flame bearer. Ryland didn't choose to fight. The battle had chosen him. His heart raced as he and Vetra stood in the ruins of the shattered building. Flames flickered on the walls. Smoke curled through the cracks in the ceiling. The 3 golden-armored warriors lay defeated around them. They didn't stay alone for long. More warriors arrived within the hour. Some came by air, their small hovercrafts buzzing like insects. Others walked in from the wastelands, carrying long weapons shaped like spines and bones. Each of them had golden lines on their armor. Vetra stood between Ryland and the enemy. She said nothing, but her hand stayed close to her blades. Ryland could feel in the air, these warriors were different. They carried themselves like judges. They didn't want to fight. They wanted to decide something. One of them stepped forward. He was old, with deep scars across his cheeks. His voice was slow and sharp. You carry the weapon of Vetra, shield of the 5th flame. You are not of our kind. But by law, the bond has been sealed. Do you accept this burden, human? Ryland didn't know what to say. His mouth was dry. He looked at the spear in his hand, still glowing softly. Then he looked at Vetra. She didn't move. She didn't tell him what to do. She waited, trusting him with the weight of her fate. Yes, he said finally. I didn't ask for it, but I won't break it. I accept the bond. The air went silent. Even the wind seemed to pause. The elder warrior stepped back and raised his hand. The others behind him dropped to one knee. Vetra bowed her head again, this time deeper than before. Then you are the flame bearer. You now stand in the path of war. They will come for you. All of them. Even the high blade of the core worlds will take notice. The elder warrior nodded once. We will not stop you. But know this. Holding the flame is not just honor. It is fire. It burns both hands and hearts. Then he turned and walked away. The rest followed without another word. The dust from their steps swallowed them as they left. Rylan and Vetra moved quickly after that. They traveled by night, avoiding open roads. Vetra led him through collapsed buildings and broken rail lines. They passed by ghost cities and craters that still glowed from past strikes. Rylan asked where they were going. To the Temple of Odes, she replied. There you'll be tested. If you survive, your bond will be unbreakable. No one may challenge it again. But the trials are cruel, made to destroy the weak. Rylan didn't feel strong, but something deep in him had changed. Every time he held the spear, he felt a strange warmth. Not power, not magic, but like something ancient was watching him, guiding him, waiting for him to understand. By the third night, they reached the desert's edge. Sand spread out like waves of gold and bone. In the center of the waste stood a single tower. Black stone. No windows. No lights. Only a door carved with symbols that looked like flames dancing in pain. Vetra stopped walking. She looked at the tower and then at Rylan. Once you enter, I cannot follow. You must face it alone. If you leave before it accepts you, the bond will break, and I will die. Rylan felt the weight of her words settle in his chest. He nodded, eyes locked on the door. He stepped forward, each foot heavy with fear and purpose. At the base of the tower, the door slowly opened by itself. Darkness waited inside. With one last look at Vetra, he stepped through the doorway. It closed behind him with a deep thud. The silence inside was total. No sound, no light, only the echo of his breath and the weight of fate pressing on his shoulders. The inside of the tower was colder than the desert outside. Rylan took slow steps forward, his boots echoing on the black stone floor. The air felt heavy, like he was walking through deep water. There were no torches, no lights, but he could still see. Faint blue lines began to glow on the walls as he moved. They pulsed gently, as if sensing his presence. The tower was alive, or at least aware. Rylan didn't understand what it wanted from him. He only knew he had to keep going. A stone path appeared beneath his feet. It twisted and turned, sometimes rising, sometimes dipping into dark pits. The deeper he walked, the stronger the feeling in his chest grew. The spear he carried gave off a soft hum, almost like a whisper. He reached a wide chamber. In the center stood a large stone platform surrounded by 7 burning braziers. Each flame burned a different color: red, green, silver, white, black, blue, and gold. A voice filled the room, deep and cold. You carry the flame of Vetra. Do you accept judgment? Rylan looked around but saw no one. He swallowed and raised his voice. Yes, I accept it. The flames flared. The stone beneath his feet trembled. The voice spoke again, then faced the trial of flame. Speak no lies. Show no fear. Fight with what you are, not with what you carry. The braziers went out. Darkness swallowed him. Then a new light appeared in front of him, a figure made of fire and smoke. It was shaped like Rylan, his face, his eyes, his body, but twisted and sharper, like a version of him built from anger. It stepped forward and raised a blade shaped like lightning. Rylan barely had time to lift his spear. The shadow struck with speed and fury. Rylan blocked the first hit, then ducked under the second. Sparks flew across the chamber. Pain lanced through his shoulder as the fire blade grazed him. He gritted his teeth and pushed forward. The shadow smiled. You don't belong here, it said. You are weak. You are afraid. Let go of the bond. Walk away. She will understand. You were never meant to be a flame bearer. Rylan didn't answer. He moved again, blocking, dodging, striking back. Every hit from the shadow felt like fire cutting through his bones. But each time he got up, each time he moved forward, sweat poured down his face. Blood dripped from his arm. You fight for someone you don't even know, the shadow hissed. Why? Rylan panted and answered, "Because she trusted me. Because I said yes. And I won't break that promise." The shadow paused. Then it screamed and charged again. Their blades clashed with a sound like thunder. Rylan felt his legs shaking. His arms were weak. But something in his heart burned stronger than ever. He screamed and drove the spear forward. The tip hit the shadow's chest. Light exploded across the room. The figure burst into sparks and vanished. Silence returned. The braziers lit again, burning brighter than before. The voice returned, quieter now, almost respectful. Trial passed. Flame accepted. You are now bonded fully. No law may break what is sealed by fire. Step forward and claim your mark. At the center of the platform, a symbol appeared on the stone. It looked like the same one Vetra had drawn in ash. Rylan stepped into it. The light from the spear flowed through him, wrapping around his arms and chest. A faint glow marked his skin. When the light faded, the tower doors opened behind him. The path back to Vetra was clear. He turned without fear and walked toward the desert light. The bond was now more than law. It was part of his blood. Vetra stood motionless near the edge of the desert. The sandstorm behind her had died down, but her armor was still coated with dust. Her eyes locked onto the dark tower as if she could see through it. She had waited in silence for hours. When the door finally opened and Rylan stepped out, the glow on his skin was faint but real. Vetra saw the change at once. The mark of the flame was now etched into him. His walk was slower, but steady. His eyes were different, sharper. He had passed. She knelt as he approached, not out of weakness, but out of ancient tradition. He quickly reached out and helped her to her feet. "That's not needed," he said. "I'm still just a man." She looked at him and replied, "Not anymore. You are the bonded flame." The wind picked up again. A howl echoed across the dunes. Vetra turned her head sharply. "They come," she said. "The core blades have heard of your bond. The high blade himself now moves. He will challenge your claim, and he will not fight alone." Rylan's grip tightened on the spear. "Then let him come," he said. "I didn't ask for this, but I won't run from it." Vetra gave a small nod. "You will not face it alone. I was given to you by the old law, but I fight beside you by choice." They left the desert that night, crossing into the valley of bone trees. Strange shapes hung from the branches, moving with the wind. Some were symbols. Some were weapons from old wars. Vetra explained the path ahead. "We go to the Hall of Flame. Others may join us there." The hall was carved into the side of a massive cliff. Inside, fire danced in stone bowls, and walls were covered in carvings of flame bearers from ages past. Rylan saw names and languages he could not read, but the stories were clear: heroes, battles, sacrifice. An elder waited at the center of the hall. His body was thin, but fire danced in his eyes. "You wear the mark," he said. "You carry the bonded weapon. But the galaxy will not kneel unless you prove your bond before them. You must face the trial of witness." Rylan stepped forward. "What is it?" The elder raised one hand and pointed to a large circular platform. "You must summon the flame inside you. Make it real. Let them all see it. Or they will say you are a thief of tradition, not a bearer of truth." Vetra placed her hand on Rylan's shoulder. "The flame is not power. It is spirit. It only rises when you speak with your true voice. Think of why you accepted me. Think of why you still carry the spear." Rylan stepped onto the platform. The fire around the room dimmed. A low sound began, like drums beating deep underground. He closed his eyes. He breathed deeply. Then he raised the spear and drove it into stone. A wave of heat exploded outward. Flames rose from the circle, wrapping around him without burning. They twisted into shapes: Vetra, the spear, the tower, the shadow he fought. His story burned in light, and all those watching could see it. When the fire faded, the elder lowered his head. "The flame speaks. The bond is true. You will face the high blade not as a man, but as a bearer of the sacred fire. And if you fall, the law itself may burn with you." Outside the hall, the sky had turned black. Ships moved through the clouds. At their center was a dark craft shaped like a blade pointed downward. It hovered above the valley in silence, as if watching the fire it had come to destroy. The high blade ship hovered above the cliffs like a silent predator. Its surface rippled with dark energy, and its edges shimmered as if cut from a night sky. No sound came from it, but all who looked upon it felt a weight pressing down. Inside the Hall of Flame, Ryland stood with Vetra at his side. Warriors from ancient clans had gathered around them, their faces hidden by masks shaped like fire. None of them spoke. They only watched. The air was thick with expectation. A deep tone echoed across the valley. A voice that sounded like it came from 1,000 mouths at once spoke from the sky. The flame bearer will come forth. The law must be tested. Let the challenger rise and meet the blade. The cliff shook as a wide platform rose from beneath the ground. Ryland stepped forward, spear in hand. His mark still glowed faintly on his skin. Vetra gripped his shoulder once, then stepped back. Her eyes did not blink. The high blade descended alone. His armor was black and gold, covered in runes that burned blue. His blade was longer than any sword Ryland had ever seen. It dragged behind him, sparking across the stone. His face was hidden beneath a jagged helm. He pointed at Ryland without speaking. Then he drew his blade and slammed it into the ground. A shock wave blasted outward, sending dust and rock flying. Ryland held his ground, boots planted firmly. His fingers tightened around the spear. The trial began without warning. The high blade charged like a storm. Ryland dodged the first swing, barely avoiding the edge of the glowing sword. The second came faster, slicing through the air. Ryland blocked with the shaft of the spear, sparks flying from a clash. Each strike was heavier than the last. Ryland could feel his arms weakening, his legs shaking. But he kept moving. He remembered the flame inside him. He focused on why he had accepted the bond. Not for power, not for pride, but for the promise he had made. The high blade struck low, then high, then spun and came from the side. Ryland dropped to one knee, then rolled forward, landing behind his enemy. He swung the spear, striking the black armor with a loud crack. The high blade growled and turned. "You are not one of us," the high blade said. "You are flesh and fear. Give me the flame, and this before I cut your truth from your bones." Ryland stood tall, breathing hard. "You don't get to decide who's worthy. The flame does, and it chose me." He raised the spear again, eyes locked on his enemy. The fires carved into the cliffs behind them flared in response. The two clashed once more, blade against spear. Old power against new purpose. The platform shook beneath their feet. The ground cracked and flames burst upward. Ryland's spear glowed brighter than ever before. The bond had awakened fully. In one final strike, Ryland spun with all his strength and drove the spear forward. It struck the high blade in the chest. The runes on the black armor blinked once, then faded. The blade fell from the high blade's hand and slid across the stone. The giant warrior staggered back, then fell to one knee. He looked up at Ryland, then slowly placed his fist over his heart. Flame accepted. The gathered clans watched in silence. Then, one by one, they raised their weapons and bowed. Ryland did not smile. He simply lowered his spear and looked toward the stars. The war had not ended, but a new fire had been lit. The high blade's fall spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. In distant systems, old rulers trembled. In hidden temples, silent monks lit ancient fires. A human now carried the flame. A human had passed a trial and broken tradition with strength. Ryland stood at the center of the Hall of Flame, quiet and steady. The spear rested beside him, glowing faintly like a sleeping star. Vetra stood to his right, her armor freshly repaired. Her eyes were calm, but beneath that stillness was deep pride. The clans began to move. Messages were sent to distant worlds. Alliances were tested. Some warriors pledged loyalty. Others whispered rebellion. The galaxy had been shaken by a single choice, a man who caught a spear and refused to let go. Vetra spoke as they walked through the valley. "You have done what no outsider ever has. But this victory is not the end. It is the spark before the storm. The High Council of the Core will not accept this quietly. Ryland nodded, then let them come. I didn't choose this path to please them. I chose it to honor what's right. He looked at the mark on his arm. It no longer burned. It pulsed slowly, as if alive and listening. The bond had become part of his soul. They traveled through a canyon lit by floating lights. Each orb represented a past flame bearer. Their faces appeared in the glow for moments before fading again. Ryland paused and touched one. It showed a woman holding two blades and laughing into the stars. She died in the last trial, Vetra said. Her flame was strong, but the council feared her. They sent war instead of honor. She held them off alone. Her name became legend. Ryland let the light pass through his fingers before moving on. That night, they reached the mouth of a cave hidden in the cliffs. Vetra called it the breathing stone. Inside, air moved as if the cave itself was alive. The walls were covered in glowing vines and crystals shaped like blades. Ryland felt peace there for the first time in days. They sat together near a shallow pool that reflected the stars. Why did you throw the spear that day? Ryland asked softly. Why at me? Vetra looked into the water. Because I saw you stand when others ran. I saw your eyes. They did not hold fear. They held choice. I didn't know what I was doing, he said. I just reacted. She shook her head. No, you accepted the path in that moment. And when you caught the spear, the law responded. But I did not expect the bond to grow this strong. Ryland leaned back, watching the stars above. Do you ever regret it? She turned to him and answered without hesitation. No, I would choose the same again, 1,000 times, even if it ended in fire. A sound stirred in the distance. Wings, not of birds, but machines. Ryland stood quickly, reaching for his spear. Vetra narrowed her eyes and moved ahead, scanning the darkness. Shapes appeared in the sky, fast, silent, and without lights. A small fleet was moving low, cutting across the canyons. They carried the colors of the core council. These were not warriors. These were enforcers. Silent judges sent to erase the flame before it spread. They come in shadow, Vetra said. They don't want to challenge. They want to destroy without being seen. This is not battle. This is fear. Ryland stepped forward, fire returning to his eyes. Then we will not hide. We'll stand where they can see us. If they fear the flame, let them see how bright it burns. The night sky above the canyon burned with silent movement. The ships of the core council flew low, sleek and dark. Their weapons were not meant for challenge or honor. They were made for erasure. Quick, clean, and unseen. Ryland stood on the stone ledge with Vetra beside him. He held the spear tightly, its glow now pulsing with purpose. He felt no fear, only a calm fire building in his chest. This was the moment the flame had prepared him for. Vetra raised her hand and sent a signal through the ancient stone. Blue lines shot across the canyon floor, forming the symbol of the sacred flame. It glowed like a giant warning, a message to all who would dare strike in shadow. The first missile came silently. Ryland saw it too late, but the symbol flared and a wall of flame rose to meet it. The explosion lit up the cliffs. The shock wave threw dust into the air, but Ryland did not move. More ships followed. Their weapons lit the sky with red light, but the warriors of the flame were ready. From caves, cliffs, and cracks in the rocks, they rose. Dozens of bonded protectors stood with weapons drawn, armor shining in the firelight. These were not armies. They were believers, keepers of the old law. They had waited for a true bearer. Now they stood with him, not because of fear, not because of command, but because the fire had returned through a single choice. Ryland led the charge. He didn't yell. He didn't call for blood. He simply moved forward, his spear spinning with heat and light. Vetra moved beside him, fast in the wind, her blade cutting through steel like cloth. The ships fell one by one. Some crashed into the cliffs. Others exploded in the air. A few turned back, retreating into the dark. They had come expecting silence. They met fire and unity. They had come to erase. They left in fear. When the last drone vanished, the warriors gathered around the stone ledge. Ryland stood in the center. The mark on his skin was now bright gold. The flame no longer flickered. It roared quietly, steady and clear. Vetra removed her helmet and looked at him. It is done. The core will think again before sending shadows. The law has not been broken. It has been reborn. Rylan nodded. He looked at the stars above. What now? He asked. She smiled softly. Now you lead, not as a ruler, as a bearer. The flame is not a throne. It is a path, and many will walk it with you. He turned to the gathered warriors. Some were human, some were not, but all of them had chosen him. He raised a spear high. The fire does not belong to one world. It belongs to all who stand for honor, for promise, for truth. A cheer rose through the canyon, loud, fierce, full of life. The fire reflected in their eyes. For the first time in generations, the galaxy had a bearer who had not been born into the flame, but earned it. Rylan stepped down from the ledge and walked beside Vetra. She did not follow him. She walked with him, as equal, as bonded, as flame to flame. And far above them, across stars and silence, the oldest watchers stirred. They saw the fire rise again, not in war, but in choice. And they knew this time it would not be put out.